Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main beam bus undervolt.
Roger, main B undervolt. Okay, stand by, 13. We're looking at it.
It is important to understand that to the secular world, the nature of the firmament, as described in the King James Bible, is a matter of theological interpretation and ancient cosmology. The Bible's view of a solid dome holding back waters is not supported by modern secular astronomy.
Mainstream science would like you to believe that the Earth's curve describes its spherical, not flat, shape, meaning its surface gradually bends away from a straight line, making distant objects disappear hull first over the horizon, a phenomenon explained by the planet's approximately 8 inches of drop per mile, though it looks flat locally due to Earth's massive size, with true curvature only obvious from high altitudes. This bulge is what obstructs long-distance views, with higher vantage points seeing further before the curve blocks the view, revealing the planet's global roundness.
Now, I heard all that loud and clear, but to me, it wasn't nothing but a bunch of confusion. And you know who the author of confusion is. My bad, y'all. Let me let y'all get back to it. Here we go.
Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere, it's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above it. A little chubbier. Chubby's a good word. It's like pear-shaped.
And what you're seeing here is a mirage.
There is no Earth curvature over water, and therefore no globe. For this test, the laser was 16.42 miles away from the observer and 4 feet off of the water. According to the globe math, the observer would have had to have been a whopping 130 feet high to observe the laser source. However, the observer's camera was only 2 feet above the water, and you could still see the source of the laser. Can you open your eyes and see that the globe has a major problem here?
F-16 fighter jet pilot says there's no curve.
Mike is an F-16 fighter pilot, retired. You decided recently that you wanted to go public, because you were kind of encouraging doctors, to speak out about what they know about the current pandemic. And, you decided that, who are you to advise them to do that if you aren't going to take steps in the same direction? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Thanks for keeping that YouTube friendly for me, because I may not have been able to do it.
No problem.
I think I would be a really big hypocrite if I'm trying to hold them to task because they don't want to blow up their gig. My gig's kind of gone and behind me. There's nothing you guys can dig and get me fired from. So there you have it. But yeah, it's that's part of what's held me back was that my wife's a professional with the military as well. She's done almost 40 years and is retiring soon. So I wanted to start talking about this because there's just too many lies in the world now. It just seems like everything is deceit, and it gets overwhelming. And all they have to do is go down the road that I went down, and they're going to be sitting on this side of the screen as well, because it's obvious. But the reason you don't ever look into it when you're in the moment is because you just figure the Earth is just vast. You don't see curvature because it's huge, right? So you don't ever think to question it, right? So about a year later, one of my daughters actually said, "Dad, you looked into flat Earth at all?" And I'm like, "Come on, no." And she like, "Oh, there's some pretty compelling stuff. I think you might be interested." And again, I had some time. So I started digging into it, and actually found, I'm pretty sure I started with taboo conspiracy stuff at seeing too far, and those things, and Antarctica, really, that your video about Antarctica's closed or whatever, that was a big one for me too. But the see too far, and I never even thought to wonder what the curvature formula is, right? 8 inches per mile squared, that ain't vast, man. The distances that we were working would have made a huge difference in my visual and radar presentations on a day-to-day basis. I know that it would have. And, I just can't hop back 20 years and put it to the test. I wish I knew then what I know now. And at least some of my goals about this is hoping that some young fighter pilot will go, "Wow, I'm going to check out what that old bastard says," and go out and do what I'm going to describe to you guys in a minute to put it to the test. Radar Mechanics 101, they built it for a flat, stationary Earth. There's no doubt about it. And my goal is for some young fighter pilot to listen to what I just said, go out tomorrow and set the bottom of your L strobe on your altitude, run it out there to 80 miles, and that bottom altitude on your cursor will stay the same out to 80 miles. Whereas it should get bigger, right? Because the Earth is curving away.
That's right.
Bingo. Where this comes into play at low altitude over the water, very low altitude over the water at high speed. And I have been there. I have done very low altitude above the water in protected airspace or northern Iraq. And it's near the Mach, 0.95 Mach. And I feel that if you were flying at 9.5 Mach is roughly 9.5 miles a minute. That was our planning factor. Mach 1 is 10 miles a minute. It's not really, but it's close. So at 9.5 miles a minute, I think I probably would have had to be a little bit light in the seat to stay very low, right?
Yes.
To hug the water. And that didn't happen. And I did that for quite a while over a lake for probably 20 miles.
Yeah.
Some poor hapless fisherman that happened to be in my flight path probably suffered for it. And to him, I apologize.
The church right now, God put the firmament, a canopy. God put the firmament, a firm, vaulted dome over the earth to divide the waters above from the waters below, and it would be kind of like that right there. It says, Job calls it a molten looking glass, and so to divide the waters from the waters. Back in the late 50s, with Operation Dominic and Operation Fishbowl, they sent nuclear rockets up there to try to blast through it, and they could not. Just look it up; it's there. Operation Dominic. To penetrate the dome. It could not be penetrated. That's because God put it there. And it divides the waters from the waters, and then God focused on the waters from below. And then he divided the waters from the waters. He brought all the waters into one place. That's a sermon in and of itself. He brought the waters into one place, and dry land appeared. So the way the shape of the earth is now is not the way that it was then. All the waters came together in one place, one big ocean or one big lake, however you want to interpret that. But then the Bible says he made the sun, the moon, and the stars, and he put them inside of the firmament. And there is no getting out of the firmament. And that means that there's no outer space. There is no outer space.
The Bible describes Earth as a flat disk covered by a solid dome called the firmament, with waters above and below it. Genesis chapter 1 explains that God separated the waters by creating this dome, placing stars and planets as lights attached to its surface. The sun and moon move across this dome in predictable patterns to create day and night. 4 corners anchor the earth, with pillars supporting the entire structure above the deep waters below. This ancient Hebrew cosmology shows Earth as the center of creation, with heaven literally above the dome and Sheol beneath the foundations. While modern science presents a different picture, billions still find meaning in this biblical worldview that emphasizes our special place in God's creation. The firmament model actually makes more sense when you consider how ancient people observed the sky and tried to explain natural phenomena without telescopes or space exploration.
David said in Psalms 24 that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. The prophets had a general idea of how all this works.
And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. Genesis 1:7. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as a molten looking glass? Job 37:18. And the stars of heaven fell upon the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Revelation 6:13. He set the earth on his foundations, so that it shall never be moved. Psalms 104:5.
The firmament is the sky, conceived as a vast solid dome. According to the Genesis creation narrative, God created the firmament to separate the waters above the earth from those below. The word is anglicized from Latin firmamentum, which appears in the Vulgate, a late 4th century Latin translation of the Bible. The firmament is described in the Genesis creation narrative. Then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. The word firmament is first recorded in a Middle English narrative based on scripture dated 1250. It later appeared in the King James Bible. The word is anglicized from Latin firmamentum, used in the Vulgate. This in turn is derived from the Latin root firmus, a cognate with firm. The word is a Latinization of the Greek steroma, which appears in the Septuagint. The word firmament is used to translate raki or rakia, a word used in Biblical Hebrew. It is derived from the root raka, meaning to beat or spread out, e.g., the process of making a dish by hammering thin a lump of metal. Like most ancient peoples, the Hebrews believed the sky was a solid dome with the sun, moon, and stars embedded in it. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, the Hebrews regarded the earth as a plane, or a hill figured like a hemisphere, swimming on water. Over this is arched the solid vault of heaven. To this vault are fastened the lights, the stars. So slight is this elevation, that birds may rise to it, and fly along its expanse.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.
I know we have still not shattered that highest and hardest glass ceiling, but someday someone will, and hopefully sooner than we might think right now. But we are all standing under a glass ceiling right now. Although we weren't able to shatter that hardest glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's got about 18 million cracks in it. We just put the biggest crack in that glass ceiling yet. Thanks to you and to everyone who's fought so hard to make this possible.
Let's take a look at Genesis 1:7, talking about the firmament, the King James Bible. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. Let's take a look here at other Bible verses from Genesis 1:7 with the New International Version. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it, and it was so. So for all the believers in God and the Bible, if you're still going to stick with the whole idea of the ball earth, you might as well stick to the evolution, the string theory, the theory of relativity, gravity, because it's not biblical. Okay, let's take a look here at Job 37:18. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong, and as molten looking glass. Okay, this is from your Bible and from Psalms. He set the earth on its foundations, so that it should never be moved. So clearly, whatever science tells us is the exact opposite of the Bible. How clear can it be? So if you're sticking to the whole idea of the ball earth, you're not going along with the biblical truth. You've been unfortunate to see by the churches that are run by Masons, they're not giving you biblical truth. They're only giving you half-truths. The one thing I find extremely interesting when it comes to the word dome. Okay, look at all these biblical verses here talking about the dome from Ezekiel, as I look at the dome over the heads of the angels. From Amos, this is a very famous verse where it talks about the vaulted dome, and he has founded his vaulted dome over the earth. Okay, again, from Ezekiel, above the dome, over their heads, was something that looked like a throne made of sapphire. And one thing I found very interesting, not only in Deuteronomy, also mentioned again in Isaiah.
So we find out fairly quickly that the modern scientific theories just aren't biblical, and they don't hold up to scripture. And the Big Bang and all that good stuff is definitely not biblical, right? So then you go back and you have to ask yourself, why, if that's the case, why are we told? Not only are we told this information, but we're taught this information From the time that we're old enough to go to school, we're indoctrinated with this information about the Big Bang and everything like that. I mean, whether you believe in the Big Bang or not, it's definitely not biblical. So either the scientists are lying or God is lying.
If I told you there was a giant barrier above the world we live on, and that this barrier took the entire second day of creation to make, you would think I was crazy or a Bible thumper. 5 years ago, I would have thought the same thing. However, I have found proof, actual video footage, that this barrier is there. It's the same barrier that we have been bouncing signals off of for decades, and when scientists said that they have detected this barrier and that it is impenetrable, NASA came out with the story that it was a man-made bubble surrounding Earth. And no one thought, maybe there's more to this. Maybe there's more than this narrative we've been given. Maybe it's why when the U.S. Air Force sent two of its own up above the stratosphere to take video of the stars, they sent us footage like this. Footage that is obviously not authentic. And it reveals why, when they were sending people to explore beyond the known world to Antarctica, that they would soon ban private exploration beyond the 60th South Parallel. It's not because they are wanting to study ice. And there's a reason that we weren't told about our ancestors being smarter than we thought, that none of them actually believed in an edge you could fall off of. There's also a reason that when we do not see rockets follow the usual flight path, they run into something. And when scientists were studying a phenomenon that was mentioned in the Book of Enoch, known as lightning sprites, they saw something they could not explain. They saw a barrier with waves moving across it. Using special cameras, high-speed cameras, they captured something, and this something is the firmament. The waters above, you can see waves move across it as this powerful burst of electricity shoots out of it. You can even compare this footage to a geyser that we have seen in slow motion. This is what they have been hiding. And this is why everyday people, scientists, are getting out, shooting lasers across bodies of water at distances that should be impossible. And it's for a reason. It's because we've been deceived, not only about who we are, about who our Father is, His love and His grace. And if they can hide the Father, they can hide the Son. You need to know that we have proof that there is a firmament and that the world beneath it is not what we've been told. We aren't that insignificant speck.
There's a mystery. Scattered around in the sand are thousands of chunks of strange yellow-green glass.
It is really, really a mysterious glass. We scientists are still kind of puzzled how these things form.
And I can't believe we just put the biggest crack in that glass ceiling yet. It's got about 18 million cracks in it.
Test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit. Beyond low Earth orbit. Beyond low Earth orbit.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on space station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit. So we have a really robust exploration program at NASA.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and that will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually. The moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to. The moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to. The moon. Enjoy reading now. And I played a lot of sports. And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now. Hello, my name is...
The only time I ever saw them actually studying normal ice was when a film crew from National Geographic came by. The rest of the time, which was most of the time, the scientists were studying something they called sky ice. This stuff was totally different. We were never allowed to go into the laboratory areas of the station because the labs had to be kept super clean, and they said it would mess up their work if they risked letting too many people in the lab. But one time, one of the researchers that I was friends with showed me a piece of sky ice. You couldn't touch the stuff with your bare hands because it was so cold. And it wasn't clear or white like normal ice. It was solid blue. He said that's why they call it sky ice, because it was the exact same color as the sky. We had to wear thick, heavy going outside gloves to handle it. The stuff was so cold, it would instantly freeze your skin if you touched it. I don't remember what the temperature he said it was, but it was something like hundreds of degrees below zero, way colder than the normal ice that was outside. He had to carry it in a metal bottle that was kind of like a thermos. He let me play with the piece of it for a while. It felt lighter than a piece of normal ice of the same size, like it wasn't very heavy at all. It almost felt like you could throw it up in the air and it would just float back down. But I didn't try that. And it was also a little flexible when I tried to bend it. It didn't break like normal ice would. And even for a small piece, you could see through it. It was solid blue right from the surface. And here's the really weird part. It didn't melt into water. When it got warm, because we had it inside, it just started to shrink. It got smaller and smaller, but my glove never got wet. And there was no water on the floor. The stuff just turned into thin air when it got warm and vaporized. He said that was the reason why they had to study the stuff right there in Antarctica. You couldn't take the sky ice back to America to study it because it was almost impossible to keep it cold enough during transit. And then they shared a verse right here where it says, "And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it." And then we continue off where it says it would always vaporize into air, and you'd have nothing left when you got back to the U.S., he said. Russian scientists had discovered the same problem when they tried to take the ice back to Russia. So that was why they all had research stations in Antarctica. After maybe 15 minutes of handling the piece of sky ice, it was almost completely gone. Just a tiny little bit was left, and my glove was dry the whole time. I'd never seen anything like it before or since, and that's unusual because I've always had an interest in scientific things. I think that's even why I got selected to go to Antarctica, because a big part of the interview was about science and what I believed about things. So I really thought it was cool to see something I'd never heard of before. The whole time I was at McMurdo, I heard people talking about the wall, like that was a special place. It's pretty common to find ice walls and ice cliffs all over Antarctica. The whole place is ice. but it's all just normal white or clear ice. So I asked my friend where they get the sky ice from, and he said it comes from the wall. I don't remember exactly how he described it, but apparently there's a huge wall of sky ice in Antarctica. He said it was hundreds of miles inland from the coast. I never got to see it myself because I was only stationed to McMurdo. I didn't get to go out on expeditions. He said it was the biggest natural structure in the world. Imagine that. He said that in the 1960s, the U.S. Army had a plan to bore a tunnel into the wall, but they didn't have a boring machine that could handle the super cold temperatures, so they had a whole testing project in Greenland where they developed ice tunnels and invented new boring machines that could operate in super cold temperatures. So this was back when they were going into forming NASA and all the other things that were kind of strange, the Antarctic Treaty, around that time, pretty close to it. And he says, like they did this whole big thing in Greenland for just practice. So it's like they were practicing to bore into the sky ice. I'm not an expert on that, but that's just what he told me. Then, once they had the new boring machine figured out, they brought it to the ice wall, or to the wall in Antarctica. He said that the machine bored a tunnel. I don't remember exactly, it was like 5 or 10 miles into the wall, but that they never broke through the other side of the wall, and that they still don't know how thick the wall is even to this day. And I'm probably not remembering this part correctly, but I think he said that at first the floor of the tunnel was solid rock, but after a mile or two in, the floor was sky ice, like it was sky ice underneath after a certain point, or something like that. And apparently the wall slowly builds itself back up. So it slowly builds itself back up after you cut it, because after a year or so, the tunnel had shrunk smaller all by itself, like a self-healing wound. It starts closing up. They had to leave the boring machine inside the wall because the tunnel shrunk too small to get it back out. And after a few decades, the tunnel was completely gone, like the part of the wall was solid again. He said that now the scientists were trying to use technology to figure out how thick the wall is. He said something about putting earthquake sensors all along the wall, and that somehow you could measure the signal from an earthquake to see how thick the wall is. But he kind of lost me on that part. I never really thought about any of that after I left. It was really weird stuff, but I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. But then a few weeks ago, I saw a map of the wall in Antarctica, except the map was all flat and crazy looking, and it showed the wall going all the way up over the whole Earth. So since then, I've been trying to learn more about the sky ice that I saw and the wall that I heard about, but I can't find anything at all. So now I'm really wondering if there could be a connection here. And that's how I found this group. So I hope that maybe some part of my experience will help someone figure something out. Well, thankful to that person. If they were telling the truth, that is some very interesting information given what we know surrounds us. We know that the firmament's not just made out of ice. It's something special. That could just be something near the foundation to prevent you from going all the way to it. The Father's design is very complex, and he has foreknowledge. He knows what mankind's going to try to do. Those little nuclear bombs they shot at the firmament was nothing to the firmament. They can't break it. They've tried. If they could, they would, but they can't. And this is just one of those stories that confirms a lot of what I had assumed would be going on. I always thought, man, if they are out there and they can go to it, they're probably trying to drill through it, and if they are, how have they not gotten through it already? And that would answer the question for you, because it closes up as you go through it. But this was back in the 60s. There's no telling what they're trying now, mostly guarding it. I'm sure that's the biggest job they have, is keeping us from going there. And if you do go there, you can only go to certain places. It is tens of thousands of dollars for a one-way ticket. Otherwise, many of us would have already gone there, tried to do some sneaking around and investigating. But this video here, it only had like 300 views. But really cool stuff. Wanted to pass this along. I know the days of censorship have it to where you can't find stuff like this anymore. and I remembered putting it in my Firmament playlist. I just wasn't sure if you guys had heard about this and wanted to pass it along to you. Answers some questions that most of you, if you're like me, had about what's going on out there and what are some of the properties near the foundation of the firmament, if they're even close to it. Could go on like that for many, many miles. Who knows? We'll find out soon someday. The firmament itself will roll away like a scroll, but that second day of creation where he put this expanse for signs and for seasons and letting us know that he will return very soon. And it's one of those things that we're sensing is right around the corner due to the way things are going in the world and what they're trying to prepare us for and all the division. But they're preparing for a war. I'll go over that in a little while in another video, what they're preparing for and how you can be prepared yourself to not fall for the deceptions to come. But see you guys around soon. I know that this is a random video and I'm just trying to put this stuff out there and stop procrastinating and share the information that I have while we still can. I'll see you guys really soon. Stay safe and stay ready.
Dominic began. A series of 31 missiles were shot straight up into the sky to test how high humans can actually reach. They quickly figured out not far at all.
It seems that whenever they were shooting these missiles up into the sky, they were actually interacting with different layers of this plasma field or this electromagnetic phenomena, and it seems to have fluid-like properties. As it actually hits a certain portion of this force field, if you will, it begins to disperse and seek equilibrium based on the impedance of the electromagnetic layers.
Why is it when we review this footage that these things are exploding? It looks like they're hitting a barrier.
Testing the strength of the firmament, and they weren't able to penetrate it.
What's going on there? What is this? In my opinion, I think that they were trying to find a way to possibly get out.
In 1962, the United States conducted a series of high-altitude nuclear tests known as Operation Fishbowl, detonating weapons at the very edge of space, some 250 miles above the Earth. While the official purpose was to study radiation and missile defense, the project's peculiar name has long raised eyebrows. The strange atmospheric phenomena witnessed during the tests, including artificial auroras and immense glowing domes, have fueled beliefs that the nuclear blast struck something inexplicably solid. The aftermath of these experiments is equally intriguing. Shortly thereafter, Cold War rivals the United States and the Soviet Union unexpectedly united to sign the Outer Space Treaty, swiftly banning nuclear weapons in space. This rapid cooperation prompts a profound question. Was Operation Fishbowl merely a military experiment, or was it a more audacious attempt to test the limits of creation itself? The evidence suggests that they may have been probing the celestial barrier, and perhaps they found it.
Johnston Island was the center of launch and experimental activity for the 1962 high-altitude weapon effects testing termed Operation Fishbowl, geared to collect effects data from nuclear bursts at high altitudes. Standing offshore were 9 instrumented test ships, vital links in the Fishbowl effort. On islands south of the equator, in Johnston's southern magnetic conjugate area, a variety of instrumentation to collect effects data was set up for Fishbowl. All in all, of the 266 Fishbowl instrument stations, 156 were on land, while 10 ships housed 80 separate project stations. 15 test aircraft carried the other 30 stations. The need for the test work carried on at Johnston and its far-flung array was compelling, for it stemmed from urgent Department of Defense operational needs requiring that high-altitude phenomena resulting from a nuclear burst be defined with simultaneous direct measurements on military operational equipment. For while America had been making rapid strides in other aspects of missile technology, its investigation of high-altitude nuclear detonation effects had lagged due to the 1958 test moratorium imposed shortly after the nation's first look at nuclear effects at high altitudes. From a ship in the South Atlantic, 3 small detonations, known as the Argus series, were launched and triggered aloft for the purpose of examining the Christophilus theory that a long-lived belt of trapped electrons could be artificially created by a very high-altitude nuclear explosion. Other effects on Argus, although measured, were not thoroughly documented. In the Pacific, as part of the Hardtack series, 3 effect shots, Yucca, Orange, and Teak, were detonated at respectively 26, 43, 77 kilometers, primarily to provide information on the change of blast, nuclear, and thermal effects with increasing altitude. From Hardtack's limited test experimentation, one lesson learned was that widely diverse quantitative effects were produced at different altitudes, including major electromagnetic disturbances, causing communications and radar blackout problems. The nature of each effect could be learned only by actual testing. More than the information they furnished, these 1958 shots indicated how much more there was to learn about nuclear burst-created atmospheric ionization. One objective concerned ICBM acquisition, tracking, and intercept problems. It was essential for both defensive and offensive planning that experimental data be obtained on the effects of high-altitude nuclear bursts on radar performance. A third objective concerned communications blackout, that is, the loss of signals due to disturbances in the ionosphere caused by high-altitude detonations. It was necessary to know the ensuing effects on military command and control systems which require long-range communications. These military objectives meshed into the overall fishbowl objective of gaining a vertical scale of information for various altitudes and yields. Included in the wide assortment of fishbowl projects were thermal studies on eye burn, investigation of debris distribution, and documentation of the nature and transport of the magnetic field disturbance generated by high-altitude detonations. On Operation Fishbowl, nuclear detonations rent the sky 5 times over the Johnston Island area, each time during the hours of darkness. Of the 5 fishbowl shots, the highest burst was the 400-kilometer Starfish event, launched by a pod-carrying Thor missile. Its yield was 1.4 megatons. In addition to the local phenomena, the transport of bomb debris and other charged particles in the magnetic field produced colorful aurora, arcing into the northern and southern conjugate regions. Checkmate, like Starfish, did not display a well-defined fireball. Checkmate exhibited a moderate aurora seen in both the northern and southern conjugate areas. Kingfish's fireball was well defined and its aurora moderate. Refraction effects from a nuclear burst are of concern in the high-precision target tracking of ICBMs in the terminal phase. Although radar on the damp ship and Johnston Island showed no gross refractive effects from any of the bursts, preliminary results indicate a refractive jitter problem under certain conditions, involving a rapid fluctuation in the apparent angle of arrival of returning radar pulses. It was present on all events, but most pronounced on bluegill and kingfish. Another electromagnetic effect important to DoD's search capability is clutter, which could hamper radar performance for a period longer than other effects. Radar clutter is caused by ionized air, ionized bomb debris, and electrons trapped in the magnetic field. All these materials reflect radar energy, giving rise to false targets on the radar scope. Our first consideration is the reflection clutter from the fireball itself. Confined to the visible fireball, it is most pronounced when a well-formed fireball is generated. Another problem is presented by field-aligned clutter, observed in that region of the sky for which the observer is at right angles to the magnetic field lines at E-layer heights, and within an azimuth of about 15 degrees to either side of magnetic north. Of the serious electromagnetic effects from the burst, least bothersome to radar performance is noise. Highly sensitive advanced radar systems are adversely affected by the detonation's broadband radio frequency noise, since it reduces the signal-to-noise ratio. In the high-frequency experiments, burst-induced ionization altered propagation conditions, but caused no widespread outage. After the detonation, usable frequencies tended to be higher than pre-burst values. On some paths, propagation conditions were enhanced by the creation of new modes or paths. Almost all conditions had returned to normal by H+2 hours, except on starfish, where effects were detectable Pacific-wide for 2 days. Checkmate caused some adverse effects on transmission paths within 700 kilometers of Johnston Island for about 30 minutes. Kingfish altered propagation conditions on paths within 2,500 kilometers of the burst point, as well as throughout the southern conjugate area for several hours. Bluegill caused blackout for about 1 minute of certain high-frequency signals whose paths passed within 200 kilometers of the Johnston Island area, with lesser effects observed on these paths for 2 hours. Tightrope produced no observable propagation changes. VHF and UHF communication circuits were not degraded by the high-altitude events. Encouraging results were obtained from a Strategic Air Command experiment, testing its airborne communication system during several high-altitude nuclear bursts. Signals from an UHF transmitter on Johnston Island were received by a KC-135 aircraft in the area and retransmitted to a relay B-47, which in turn retransmitted the signal to Hickam Air Force Base. Communications were not disrupted on this circuit by the high-altitude events. The optical measurements documented the spatial, temporal, and spectral characteristics of UV optical infrared effects associated with the
So, on that second day of creation, the text describes God as creating this vast, open expanse, this rakia, to separate the waters and create order. So where did the solid dome idea come from? Well, that's on the translators. The Greek and Latin words used for translation meant something firm or solid, and they were heavily influenced by other ancient cultures that literally believed that the sky was a physical dome. The point is this: the rakia is less about a literal dome and more about the divine act of creating ordered, habitable space from chaos. It's the stage itself set by the Creator for life.
In 1833, this is documented, well documented, and you're about to see that. They weren't talking about deep space and rocks and us flying through an infinite, ever-expanding universe. They said that the firmament on high was one solid glare of fire and light, and it looked as though every star in the sky was falling to the ground, and that they were certain the day of judgment was at hand. Terrifying. You could imagine thinking about the Messiah's words, the stars, after the tribulation of those days, the stars are going to fall and all these things are going to happen. The tribulation, there was actually persecution going on. The Inquisitions were still going on. They didn't stop until the next year, until 1834. And so there was a lot of stuff going on. If you were keeping the Sabbath, you were a Judaizer. If you didn't adhere to the creeds, you know, it was pretty dark. It was dark times. And then you started having this awakening. I'm assuming people saw this and thought, we need to be ready in case the stars falling again is for real, you know, because when it was happening, it said many wicked men were on their knees that night praying to the Lord and calling on others to pray for them. And they were terrified. And so I thought, man, this sounds pretty like a big deal. This document that I just read was from somebody in Tennessee, a few hours north of me. And I thought, how far could you see this? Surely it wasn't just localized to Tennessee, you know. And sure enough, everywhere they said you could see it everywhere east of the Rockies. And so Earth curvature didn't block the view, but the Rocky Mountains blocked the view. And so you had this image here on the left and the one on the right. They look very similar. And I thought, why are they drawing a dome shape with stars radiating out from a central point? This doesn't look like the deep space narrative. It almost looks like a dome type of structure with a star in the middle. And I didn't just see it in one or two places. I started seeing this in every depiction that I could find. And that star in the middle, meteors radiating down. I don't like calling them meteors. I think they're more than just that. They're not space rocks. But this was the one from Niagara Falls. It was actually printed in the Mechanics magazine. Someone who saw it, that's what they drew. And here's an astronomer. And this guy said, based on all the eyewitness testimonies he could find, he believed that these lights falling down were radiating from the constellation Leo. Now, there's no proof of that. I don't know if there is any truth to that or if it's significant, but that's what he said. And he said it was a specific star that these things were coming from. And to me, that doesn't match a globe flying through a bunch of rocks.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.